Democratic Party is a morally bankrupt institution. Realistically speaking, we have a one-party system. And this is what the Overton window getting pulled to the right means, because the right-wingers get more and more and more radical. Democrats don't hold the line. So, you know Megan Hunt, who is the mother of a trans child, and she is a senator in the Nebraska Senate. She left the Democratic Party. Filibustering Nebraska State Senator Megan Hunt leaves Democratic Party. She's tired of the Democratic Party for taking credit for her achievements while not supporting red state Dems financially. Out bisexual Nebraska State Senator Megan Hunt, who helped filibuster anti-trans legislation, has switched her party affiliation from Democratic to Independent. She switched because of the media's hyper-focus on party affiliation and the, quote, lack of support from national groups, such as Emily's List or the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, for, quote, liberal candidates in conservative-dominated states. Parties are not the future, she said. The political dysfunction is extreme, and at the national level, the parties are ideologically bankrupt. She said her party switch isn't a reflection of her state's Democratic leadership, and said that her politics would remain on the progressive left. However, she accused national groups of taking credit for the legislative accomplishments of progressive politicians in red states, like her, while not financially supporting those candidates. She also pointed out that in Nebraska's unique one-chamber legislature, party affiliation matters less than in other states. Leadership roles are determined by a chamber-wide vote, and committee assignments are, quote, divided evenly among Nebraska's 3 congressional districts, rather than by party, which is in the majority. So it seems like basically what she is signaling here is that she thinks it's not going to be a huge deal. She doesn't think that it's going to really negatively affect the situation in Nebraska, I suppose. So I don't know. Do people think that this is a bad move from her? I'm not really seeing, I guess, where it is harmful specifically. And I understand exactly what she means. Like, she's kind of saying, I am not going to, like, I don't want to be part of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party, first of all, doesn't actually like have like the same values necessarily. They want credit for what she's doing, but what she's doing is not so that the Democrats can get credit for it. What she's doing is trying to protect abortion and trying to protect trans rights. And the national level of Democrats are not making as big of a push to do those things. They're not making as big of a push to protect those rights. So she is alienated from that party. So like, she doesn't want her behavior to be reflecting well on the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party doesn't actually support her. They want to take credit for what she's doing, but they don't want to support her campaign. They don't want to like financially make sure that Democrats like her are winning in more districts. Like, it's lip service. It's morally bankrupt. And I totally understand where she's coming from. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward if more and more people decide to leave the Democratic Party. Generally speaking, having a third party, like having the progressives split into 2 parties, like a significant number of independents versus a significant number of Democrats or whatever, that hurts the Democrats' chance of winning, because the independent doesn't have a huge chance of winning in the first place, which is a problem. And that I think is part of what Megan is trying to address here, that it's not even possible for an independent to get elected. Like, that is fundamentally the problem. Like, we have a 2-party system. It completely does not allow for any realistic third-party wins, because we don't do ranked voting. We do a first-past-the-post voting system. So it couldn't even be that you voted, oh, well, maybe, you know, Megan Hunt is running as an independent this year, so someone else is running as a Democrat, which means that she is a progressive politician who's potentially going to be running against a different progressive politician. In a ranked voting system, you could say, okay, well, I really want Megan to win, but if she doesn't, my second choice is the other Democrat. Or sorry, is the actual Democrat, because she is independent now. The Democrats suck, no doubt, but third parties and independents have no viability in our system. We need to reform the Democrats and push out the old guard. It is much more feasible to do that. Megan has given up her power to reduce the harm of Republicans and Democrats. Right, because exactly, like, what does happen if maybe she will have earned the loyalty of the voters within her specific district, and she'll be able to go, yeah, like, at a local level, third parties can win. You know, like, if she stays at that local level, she's already in that position. When she runs for re-election, they'll probably just be like, okay, well, you know, maybe she'll still get all the normally Democrat votes, will go independent in her district, but it's hard to say. Yeah, I mean, of course, there is the point to make that Democrats are just a different shade of red. Realistically speaking, we have a one-party system. Like, we have a one-party system where They just kind of pretend to have some superficial differences, but fundamentally at the end of the day, their interests are all aligned with capital. So I understand the frustration, but I do think if she tries to go any further, like if she tries to go for any office beyond the local, and maybe she just has no intention to do that, there is a good point to be made there that she maybe is just going to stay at that local level. So maybe her being an independent is not going to really make that big of a difference. Comparing a local election like her being a senator in Nebraska, we can't really compare that to being an independent running for, it's not like Jill Stein, which everybody always gets upset with Jill Stein for running Green Party and taking votes away from whoever the popular Democrat is at that time. Like there is a sense that like, if you are a progressive, you have to vote Democrat. And if you vote your conscience and for the person you actually think would do the best job as an independent, like, oh, all you're really doing is hurting our chances of winning. So it's like yet another way in which our choices are manufactured. Like, do you really have a choice if you feel like you have to vote for the Democrat in order to win? Like in order to, not even in order to win, like, cause it's, you aren't winning then. If you want Jill Stein, you're not winning. You're just losing less than if a Republican got in office and fucked up all your civil rights. Nowadays, it's not really as true that we have a one-party system since one party is actively genocidal. I kind of feel like the biggest part of the Democratic Party is at least ambivalent enough about trans people that like I truly don't think that the Democrats out there like Megan Hunt until just now, I don't think that those Democrats are a good representation of all Democrats. Like, I think that those are exceptions and that those people may represent what we think the Democratic Party should be. But on the whole, the Democratic Party is a morally bankrupt institution at this stage. I don't really see any way around that. Like, it's just as corrupt and beholden to moneyed interests as the Republican Party. Why don't the Democrats go harder against oil companies, How many Democrats are taking money from oil companies and then our fucking environment is still collapsing and it's been discovered that human beings can't actually tolerate heat and humidity as high as we thought we could. I don't disagree that they suck ass, but suck ass does seem better than Hitler. I don't really think so, Decoy Duck. I think what you're doing is you're basically, like, the comparison that you're making is between, like, the Nazi party versus like the neighbors that would politely turn the other way politely and uncomfortably turn the other way when their neighbors were being dragged kicking and screaming out of their houses. You're no better. Just because you're not actively perpetrating the genocide doesn't mean that you politely stepping to the side is any less of a function of that fascistic system. This is why I don't really think that I don't think you can reasonably say that our actual choices between Democrats and Republicans are meaningfully different to one another. It still seems a little jaded to say that Dems being beholden to the corporate interest and moving back women's human rights 50 years are the same. Darkly Yours, why in those 50 years did Democrats not pass an actual law enshrining the right to abortion in law? They said they were going to. In fact, they campaigned on it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. They campaigned on it constantly. They used the abortion issue to get elected, and then they didn't ever do anything to codify it. And then it got taken away by the court system. So yeah, no, the Democrats don't care about you. Like, the Democrats were just as much a part of moving human rights back on Roe v. Wade as the Republicans were. Democrats are just as culpable because they squandered their power over and over again. When you have a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate and House, you need to push things through, and they just won't, because then they can't use those wedge issues to campaign on. Hey, good morning. It's Editing Lux here. The Democratic Party has the official stance that we should let COVID continue ripping through our communities because disabled and old people are the only people who are affected by it, which means that they are openly genocidal toward disabled people. They still want to continue funneling money into the police force, and the police force is like one of the main ways that they're actively continuing to be genocidal toward Black people and people of color in general, but specifically like Black people. And they're still continuing the practice of separating children from their parents at the border, and also they do that to Indigenous people as well. So the forcibly removing children from the group aspect, yeah, the Democratic Party has figured out that it's not popular to be openly genocidal toward trans people. But through their indifference, they are still enabling the Republican Party to do that, and they are still openly genocidal toward other groups. So sorry for that whole minute-long rant. I'll let you get back to the content. Enjoy. Some Democrats have actually funded far-right candidates, so there's that too. So yeah, I mean, I know people are like, well, the Democrats are not as bad because they're not actively perpetrating the genocide. Like, they're not the ones actually holding the gun to our head. So it's not that bad. My point is that we do need to vote for it, if nothing else, to slow the bleeding. It's electoral, stop the bleed, doesn't mean it's curing the wound. Yeah, and to be clear, I don't advocate against voting for Democrats. It just sucks that I feel like I'm forced to, you know? Like, I don't want to vote for Joe Biden the next time. Like, it's against my morals to vote for Joe Biden at this point. Like, with the flubbing of the pandemic response and the not fucking ending the kids in cages thing. Like, it's against my morals to vote for Biden, and I have to. I don't have a choice. Not that it really matters, because I live in Kansas and I don't have, like, my vote doesn't actually count for anything because we have the Electoral College. I'm not saying don't vote. I'm just saying it sucks that we are put in this position where the fact that I keep voting for Democrats means that they continue to be rewarded for not doing dick fucking anything, you know? Like, I'm paying taxes to a government that isn't trying to protect my rights. I just had to vote for a conservative Democrat in my district because the other three candidates are anti-choice Republicans. Felt gross. Yeah, and this is what the Overton window getting pulled to the right means, because the right-wingers get more and more and more radical. Democrats don't hold the line at, like, no, we're not going to say, like, okay, well, you know, abortions after 6 months in the pregnancy clearly need to be legislated and carefully, like, the state needs to be involved in the healthcare decisions of these women. I don't know. It's gonna be May. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. I want to especially shout out this month Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Danielle McDonald, Amanda B., Athiette, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Sarah A., Wellington Marcus, Michelle Winter, Desi Quiche, Jamie Jam, Suzanne Maynard, Mr. Atheist, Elizabeth Bartell, Kevin Young, Nova, and Sojo.